It's not an arms race. You can sail affordably in a high-end competition.
You know, the class is going upwards. I mean, this cycle of nationals, we've had on average about 10, 12 more boats.
It's the level of family input into the class and the generations of families.
One thing that Sharpies taught me, and I guess this is why it's really attractive to a lot of people, is it's such a technical boat to sail, and I reckon that's why a lot of people get drawn into it.
Sometimes what people don't realise is that the racing is incredibly fierce, but almost the moment you step back on dry land, all of that sort of gets put to one side, and we're just one great big family. Well, the Australian Sharpie is a three-person off-the-beach dinghy. It's 20 foot long and roughly about 6 metres. And they're sailed only here in Australia. It's an Australian class, but it does have a little bit of international history. But I think the best things about the boats is that they're the perfect blend between high-performance competitive racing and the whole reason we go sailing in the first place, which is to have fun. You've got some of the best sailors in Australia racing these boats, but then also juniors coming straight out of their junior classes or some adults that are just learning to sail for the first time. We're all one big family, and we all have such a fantastic time together off the water.
It's, for the bulk of the fleet, it's close enough to one design that you can pick up any boat, go as good as your sort of local fleet. You spend a bit of money, you can go a bit faster, but you don't have to, it's not an arms race. You can sail affordably in a high-end competition. So it's something you can't get in most other classes. So it's hard with some of the other international classes to sort of go, compete, be at the top of the game, do everything you want to do, with travelling, having to own potentially 2 boats and all that sort of stuff. The cost becomes prohibitive. So you find that the good sailors come and go out of Sharpies, go and do their international stuff and come back in again and find that the fleet's just as hot as it ever was.
For me personally, it's the level of family input into the class and the generations of families. So my grandfather, my father, my mum have all sailed Sharpies and their friends have sailed Sharpies. And to me, I reckon it's awesome and it's cool to see more young people in, and hopefully my kids sail Sharpies and that will sort of go on forever and ever. Every year we have our World Championships. You know, and you can sail 5.0s and 5.0s and all these other classes, which are great, but every year we have the biggest competition you possibly can, and it's within reach for all of us to get to. And
It speaks for itself in some respects. I mean, we've got 52, 53 boats here over in WA. We had 74 there last year, and you know, the class is going upwards. I mean, this cycle of nationals, we've had on average about 10, 12 more boats at every national championship. So class is going places. We've got lots of female participation, lots of juniors, lots of young people. It's just a great class to be, but it's also technical. You know, it's as technical as you want to make it or as simple as you want to make it.
The Sharpie is certainly one of the older classes in Australia. The design originated out of West Germany back in the 30s, and it became the heavyweight Sharpie class at the time, or the Australian 12 square metre class. And its history there was, you know, quite heavy boats, and these boats were pretty hard work back in the days. But you know, as the class modernised and the class developed, it still retained the same hull design which we sail with today. So there's shades of our history in everything that we do now, but the class is also so much more high performance now than it was, you know, back in the 30s. The history was that boats were built here in Australia by guys that had the talent and had the skill to build those boats. As that's developed over time and fiberglass boats became a thing, they were still built in Australia by grassroots Australian builders. Classes around the world that are thriving quite often are built in, you know, significant large-scale factory environments, and they're built to mass-produce boats, because to mass-produce boats and make it profitable is what's going to create big fleets. But I think what is great about the Sharpie is how it's bucked that trend, and that one of its key strengths is that it remains built by Australian builders, grassroots builders right here in Australia.
Everyone we're talking about is in Australia, building the boats in Australia. I think that's awesome to start with. I think the fact that they're commercial guys doing the work, but they're in Australia, they're just, average punters running a business, building boats, I think is awesome as well. Yeah, so we had a massive point in time where we didn't build boats and we weren't building many. Since we started manufacturing boats again and more boats were being built, the numbers have just grown and grown and grown. Hopefully Yacht Lab brings another layer to that and we can build more boats again. But yeah, it's huge. The more boats we build, the more people that can sail. It really is as simple as that. And the boats aren't getting any younger, the ones that are already built. They've got a lifespan. Although it's long in Sharpies, they're only gonna be at the top for so long.
There were a number of builders that we can essentially thank today for having a class. Guys like Macca Hazelgrove, who built, I think, 180-something boats in his time. And that's over a 40-year career. And I mean, this guy's not running a major yacht production company. He was building them out of his backyard until the council actually told him that he had to move into a shed because the fiberglass dust was disturbing his neighbours. And this guy went on to build 180 Sharpies and ultimately sustain our class to where we are today. So many of those boats that are 25, 30 years old are still racing and are still getting good results. But it doesn't mean that we can stop. It means that we need to keep building boats. So those boats really sustained our class. And then in more modern times, Macca's son Tim has now been building Sharpies for quite some time. He's built 14 or 15 Sharpies and plenty more on the way, as well as some new guys down in Harken who took over the West Australian moulds at Yacht Lab and are building boats as well. So, it's never just one builder. While Macca did carry that burden for a long time, the builders really, across the whole board, really kept our class going.
I've got a photo in here somewhere, I'm going to get that up. My name is Robin Hazelgrove, otherwise known as Macca, and I've been in the Sharpie frame since 1960, and I've sailed over 1,000 races. But the good thing about my relationship with Sharpies is I built 180 of the things. When I built my first fiberglass Sharpie up in the shed at Marion, the only fiberglass things available was gel coat, resin, matte and cloth. That's the only things available. And because I wanted a sandwich, I used vermiculite, which is expanded mica. I use it in gardening, ceilings for insulation. I had to grind up my own foam, mix it with the vermiculite, and that was my sandwich. And that was my first boat, and I made it for my brother Max, and he was quite successful in it. A couple of my good years building Sharpies, I built 10 boats a year, but I kept the prices down as much as everybody wanted me to go high-tech with all the materials. I kept the boats simple build and kept the price down. My last Sharpie I built for about $5,000. Tim's charging about $15,000 in a matter of 5 or 6 years. When Tim started building them, he changed all the interior design. And Robbie and me said, why in the stuff and hell are you doing? Why didn't he just stick the way I've done it? But now he's built 14 boats. I think it was brilliant what he did inside. Absolutely brilliant.
Nowadays, we're not building as many boats per year as we were when Macca was doing it. And we're very lucky that he did that. Nowadays, the boats are a little bit more high performance. There's a little bit more production that goes into it. But we have two really quality builders building boats that are going to last 30 or 40 years. So we needed more builders in the system, and a couple of Victorian guys, Rod Allen and Mark Ablett, they spoke to the guys in Western Australia. Peter Chappell, who's over there, legend of the class, was really heavily involved in ensuring that those Windrush moulds that were in Western Australia were used for so many years. But they'd been out of circulation. Windrush weren't building boats anymore. So Rod and Mark, along with PCs, helped revive those moulds and get them sent over to South Australia.
We run forward. Right, so if I ever lose one, right, he's on a rope. Right, and it's got a stopper underneath. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, well, I suppose we grabbed the moulds from WA probably, 18 months, 2 years ago. We've just been looking for a builder really that we can actually build accessible boats, accessible components and everything like that. Most of the other things with the Sharpie we can actually buy off the shelf now with, centreboards and rudders being built in Melbourne. Got a variety of spar makers, sail makers, everything like that. We're just lacking hulls, basically. Huge supply and demand issue, and we grabbed the moulds, and it's taken a little bit to get to them. I mean, Peter Chappell, he sort of had a big hand in making the moulds, you know, maybe 30 years ago, so they needed a little bit of work, and the guys have done a great job. We went to Yacht Lab in the end over in South Australia, and the boys just took it on head on. And yeah, it was just fantastic to see the finished product, getting a gel coat boat out of the moulds. You know, the boat's super stiff, and there's been some really cool little bits and pieces that we've added along the way that I think are going to make this class even better.
It's very important because we've got one builder in South Australia that's only been producing maybe 2 boats a year, and there's a lot more people that want new boats, and young guys that want to get into the class can't get a good second-hand boat because people aren't changing them over because there's no one building new boats. So it's very important to get the boat built and get it here for the Nationals, even if it didn't sail. We didn't come to these Nationals to do anything good in the regatta. We came here to promote the boat and so people could see it, and I think that has been a success. It's really exciting, the future of the build, what they can do, because this is the first one the boys have ever built, and to build it the whole lot. To think 2 weeks ago this boat was not even stuck together, it was just 3 pieces.
Rodney's been huge just from a financial perspective and just going, this is what we want to achieve for the class. There's no self-interest across the board with it, and it's just a lot of goodwill from a lot of people that just go, we want to make this class accessible. You know, we want to continue. The strengths of the Sharpie class is that old boats are competitive, but we need to get those new boats in there to basically roll those older boats through. So it's been massive from all parties, and I think the goodwill behind the project is what's going to drive it, and I think that's what we've seen here. Like, everyone's been super supportive of what we've tried to do. People have offered some assistance along the way. People have starting to think about their ideas and how we can sort of simplify what we can actually make the boat better as well, and that's the thing. And once we get through this prototyping stage, hopefully we can get into a product that is basically off the shelf, and then if you want to add things along the way, you can.
I can't stress enough how much time, effort and money Rod Allen put into this project. But thankfully the work's been done. The boats measure, they're great boats, and Yacht Lab are now building them in a profitable way, which is what's going to keep them going. But the first boat out of those Yacht Lab moulds was completed just in time. It got taken over to Perth, and they were still fitting it out the day of the invitation races. So they didn't go over there to set the world on fire, but they showed the boat, they showed what these builders were capable of, and that was super important to getting this project underway. But as luck would have it, 3 months later, COVID hits, and no one's thinking about buying Sharpies anymore. But anyway, as we came out of COVID, they still had a little bit of fire in the belly to build a boat, and thankfully decided to build one.
Max called Smoko. Yeah. You always need someone to take the punt on you, really. Like, you know, it's hard to gain people's confidence boat building, and, you know, in a specific class that's had such a good boat builder for so many years without someone taking a punt on some new guys. And Rod sort of had some support from the Vic Sharpie Association with some, you know, some engineers and stuff to help us along. So that was really great to sort of take a risk on, you know, building his, what he said ended up being his dream boat, you know, with some guys who were sort of unproven and untested as far as he knew. We never talked to him on the phone until we started building his boat. We sort of, you know, he just took the punt on us, and it was, yeah, pretty courageous of him to do, I thought.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is, you know, you look at a lot of the production boats and, you know, people get up and they do it as a day job, where you look at, you know, your yacht craft and your yacht lab guys, they do it for a passion. That's the difference. You know, their boats they build are a work of art. You know, they live and breathe it. And that's what you want in your boat. You want it to be, you want love and care going into it. You know, you don't want it slapped together. That's what I really like about it. And I think it's important for an Australian class to stay in Australia too. Support the guys, you know, the grassroots guys, keep the class moving. Yeah, I think it's what makes it special.
So we had John do the LAM schedule for us and basically changed it a little bit between the first boat and second boat. Yeah, so we're just trying to get the weight down, but keeping it strong, obviously. Yeah, with foam cores and stuff like that. But yeah, just I guess watching it evolve from boat 1 to boat 2 is quite a big thing. So yeah, just working away, hopefully getting better every boat and lighter and stronger.
So we've always been thinking, like the whole way since we finished Rod's boat, was always, you know, what we'd do different in the next boat if we had the chance. From when Alex called us and, you know, we spoke to him about it and we talked about what kind of boat he wanted, and we, you know, he wanted a, let's call it a standard Sharpie, you know, console, nothing super fancy as far as fit out, pretty conventional, you know, looking boat. You know, we sort of thought this is the perfect opportunity to not build a custom boat, but to sort of start working towards building a production boat, which is the end game, really.
I saw it as an opportunity for the class. It's what the class needed in my eyes, was another builder. And to have someone to step up and actually build a second boat was a big thing. You know, no one really putting their hand up. So I thought, you know, if I'm going to do anything, do my part for the class and put my hand up and be the next boat to get the boat, get it on and get it building. And, you know, it's worked out well now. We've got 2 more boats on the way. I think it's really important just to get the ball rolling. I took on the responsibility, probably didn't really have to, but, you know, if everyone's got that mentality, who's going to do it?
That was obviously a pattern off of the deck, the underside of the deck, right? As you go that way. Yeah. So those nibbles are the little, that's the transition of the 10 to the 5, you know, out wide. But I don't have any marks of where they are. So rough centre line, you know, rough centre line, down to, you know, that line across there is straight across the shear. So assuming that everything touches, it should be there, but I was wondering if you just cut, you know, obviously cut 10 mil higher and run that curve through, like transition all the way through, and then we'll just nibble those bits out. So this is a new addition, Harry.
What is it?
It's the anchor locker, we call it.
Revolutionary?
Storing chain and anchors.
Every Sharpie built in the last 20 years has got it, but we think it's revolutionary.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit of the icing on the cake, really. Like, it's great to sort of have such a close personal connection with the boat, and then to see it sailing, see it doing well, hopefully, see everything that we've painstakingly thought over and overcomplicated and all that sort of stuff working, all our ideas, and You know, the sort of engineering with John and using our sort of boat building, you know, sort of how we would like to build it, seeing all that sort of work is a bit of a thrill, and then seeing, you know, you guys and the guys that have sailed Sharpies forever, you know, be pretty blown away with the quality and the end result. I think it's a bit of a pat on the back, and it's a bit of a good feeling. So
I think the boys are more than capable of, you know, putting out the amount of boats that we need, that we want a year. You know, by the time when they get their stuff sorted with these moulds and start getting the boats rolling out the door, I don't reckon a quantity issue won't be there at all. I think, you know, a lot of people just need to step forward and build new boats, to be honest. You know, and what that'll do is that'll bring the sailors in behind it, because then there's the second-hand market goes up. You know, we've actually got more boats out there, because at the moment, trying to find a good boat between the 10 to 20 grand is literally impossible. You know, they get sold like that. Word doesn't even hit the street and they're sold. So I think what that'll do is bring a lot more boats into the market, which will then naturally drag more sailors in, because everything's a lot more accessible.
That's the beauty about a Sharpie. Anybody can build a Sharpie. You don't have to be licensed. In the national class, you have to be licensed and go through all the rigmarole of getting approved by the international body. Anybody can build a Sharpie, and if somebody wants to build a Sharpie, I think it's important they build it. I think that's important, and I admire those guys. They're doing a marvellous job, they are.
So when I was building this boat, I put a lot of thought into probably the last year or so, thinking about how I'm going to fit up a boat, you know, what I'm going to do differently, how I want things. And the boat's really nothing special. I mean, it's pretty much your bitch basic Sharpie setup, with a couple of little quirky things here and there that make it a little bit special. And you know, with the way everything's going with all the gear and how technical Harken's getting with their blocks and all that stuff, it just opens up a completely different avenue for, you know, what you can do really now. So we've gone, you know, lash on pulleys everywhere. I think there's probably maybe even 2 shackles on the whole boat, if that. So, you know, everything's lightweight, movable. You know, the new fly blocks are just unreal. We've got them in a lot of places, and they run so smooth. Why change what's gone quick already in a way? You know, we know the foils are going really quick through the water. Concept Fibers have done an amazing job with them. Then the mast, you know, you got the Epsilon and the Super Spar. We went the Super Spar just for something different. But we're running the boom, the square section CST boom. Just keep everything as, I guess, what you know. Don't go chopping and changing it too much, or else, you know, you put this new boat in the water and you'll be a bit scattered because you don't know what you're really doing with what you've got. So, yeah, with the way I set up the boat, I was able to step off my old boat onto this boat and bring a lot of my knowledge across to it to be able to get this boat similar speed, if not quicker, on the water.
We're just putting some resin over the exposed foam and just help the glue, just before we put the glue on for the deck to go on.
Once it's on it, you can't take it off, right?
Yeah, we're hoping so. Yeah, that's it.
Well, we've just measured this fine piece of equipment, and we've managed to make it all work. So yeah, happy days. It's crucial to how we, exist and how we evolve as a class as well. You know, turning boats over is important, and seeing new boats like you guys putting a new one on, and Middo is next, probably next week, and on it goes. So it's good. With the new boats that Tim's been producing, we've had a fair bit to do with that. We've seen a lot of those come through the measuring process. But what is great to see is this, coming from a different manufacturer and a different mould. We want to see, try and see some more of that. So that's awesome. 8916. That's where it's sitting.
When you got an older boat, it's there's certain things you want to change. If you're jumping in a boat, you pick up and you go, I want to change a few things here and there. And by building yourself a new boat, really it gives you opportunity to be able to change the things that you want to change. And I just like a fresh platform. You come out, you got all your development out the way. You step on a new boat. You do what you want to do. You do what you've been thinking about, what you've wanted to do, and then you jump on the water and you go sailing. And that's one of the biggest benefits you get out of the boat. Just finished my Boilermaker apprenticeship, and I just love yachting. So just throw every cent you got at it and see what happens, I guess. So I've said to a fair few people now, it's a good talking point, but if I can do it, you can too. So knuckle down and make it happen.
Okay, so we're christening the Sharpie Sassy Foods. May all who sail in her enjoy fair winds and smooth seas.
We've got a reputation to uphold, Harry. We can't be going out to the pub and get smashed like you young blokes every night of the week.
Maybe every second night.